Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I have 6 o'clock on the dot. I would like to welcome everyone to the event topic preview for Winston's upcoming public seminar titled Removing Commercial Karma 2. This will be taking place September 2nd through the 4th at ECETI Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington. We have received a huge response to the announcement for tonight's call and have actually packed the house, so to speak. We'd like to thank you all for your interest and for joining us this evening. Please be aware as well that this call is being recorded and will be posted to Winston's YouTube channel this Wednesday. Once it is posted, a link to the recording will be sent out by email. If you haven't already joined our mailing list, please do so by visiting our website at www.wisic.com and entering your email address in the top right corner. In this way, you can stay informed as to Winston's activities, upcoming events, YouTube channel posts, and to receive the periodical Winston's Watch posts as well, which offer commentary on current events. The ECETI Ranch, where the seminar is being held, is truly a special place. Nestled within the Mount Adams Wilderness north of the Columbia River, it is in south central Washington State. ECETI Ranch is a legendary Cascadian UFO and ET contact hotspot. We're grateful for the opportunity to return to the ranch and hold another WISIC event at such a unique and extraordinary venue. ECETI Ranch does have on-site lodging and camping, and meal plans will also be available. For more information and details on registration, please visit www.privateinvitationeceti, that's ECETI.com, and then click on ECETI 2016 calendar, which is right at the top of the page. You can then scroll down through the chronological list of events until you reach September, and you should see Winston's smiling face right there at the top of the September events. Winston is pleased this year to have Frederick Lerman joining him as a special guest. Frederick is an author, educator, consultant, and the founder of Nomad University. He will actually be giving a short presentation over the weekend as well as on prosperity consciousness, which explores practical steps for aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your ethics so as to remove all conflict from your mind regarding money, how you make it, and how you use it. Very intriguing topic. You can learn more about Frederick and Nomad University at www.nomaduniversity.com. Winston will be available at ECETI on Thursday, September 1st, as well as Monday, September 5th, for a limited number of private continuing education sessions. These sessions are designed for 1 to 3 people. They are 1.5 hours in length for a fee of $350 and will only be available to workshop attendees. To reserve your time with Winston, please contact our office directly at support@wssic.com or at 971-333-1005. ECETI staff who is handling event registration are not able to reserve your time with Winston, so you will need to contact us directly if you're interested in that. That's all I have to open up the call tonight. I will have some important information to share at the end of the call, so I encourage you to stay tuned for that. But for now, we'll just hand it to Winston.
Well, okay. How's the sound?
Oh, it sounds great.
Well, it's good to talk and visit with all y'all. We have these conference calls with our Gardeners Club, so I suppose many of the gardeners are on this particular call, so you're pretty much used to the way I do things and the way I talk. Some of you might have a hard time understanding my accent, but I'll try my very best to be plain. Anyway, last year we had done our event up at ECETI, which I titled Removing Commercial Karma. And the last few years anyway, what occurred to me a number of years ago, that aside from all this third dimensional commercial things that we do, that many in the what we would call the enlightenment or spiritual community, those who were working on spirituality, ascension, and so forth, were hampered because they were dragging behind them commercial karma, as I styled it. Because again, it's real hard to meditate, when the sheriff's at the front door fixing to kick you out of your home. So I thought that I would try to get into that community of people and introduce some of the techniques on the third dimensional type commercial principles, which might be of assistance, and perhaps remove some of the problems that they have suffered with in this third dimension as they try to raise their vibrations. So, at our last event up at ECETI, the title of that was Removing Commercial Karma, and we generated a huge amount of energy. Oh, wow, I was really pleased with that. Now this one is going to be on that same vein, which is Removing Commercial Karma Part 2. And we're going to go a little bit further into putting together an esoteric or metaphysical point of view for many of the things that we have been looking at. Now, the first thing that I learned when I first started studying commercial redemption was that it was necessary to look at this from a metaphysical point of view, and without that view and understanding of it, would be very, very limited. And so I understood that from the start. And so from time to time over the years, since we've been in operation here since 2004, I have, in fact, tried to introduce a bit of metaphysical here and there. I think some of you who have been exposed to some of these things will recognize them. But we're getting to the point. The earth is changing, and I think many of you are aware of the shifts that are going on, for the better, by the way, as our Mother Earth moves up in vibration, as we make our way into the photon belt, for all you astronomers. But the energies are increasing, which is good in some respects. In other respects, it's very difficult for some. We're seeing literally a lot of people just plain old going crazy, because this new energy that comes in has the tendency to push some of the negativity, some of the negative energy in our systems up to the surface. And so if that happens, recognize it and then remove that negative energy. There are different ways to clear, and I'm not an expert on that. Perhaps you can go to some of the websites. James Gilliland's website, for instance, has information on that, and many others. Try to help people to deal with some of these particular problems. So anyway, with this event we're having, there will be 3D information there, on some particular subjects. I'm hesitant to put out a strict schedule because, to be honest, things are moving so quickly that I hesitate to announce a schedule for fear I'll be held to it. But anyway, we will be discussing some of the items that we'll touch lightly upon this evening. Now, our format generally, we generally start out on Friday afternoon. Many of the people that come, I shouldn't say many, but some of the people who come are actually new to the thought process. And so to facilitate and to kind of get them into an idea of some of the basics, then usually on Friday afternoon we'll hold perhaps a 3-hour or maybe longer kind of lecture / workshop to go over some of the basic elements that people are confronted with when they first come onto this thought process. So that would be Friday afternoon. And then as, excuse me. And then, as Melissa announced on Friday evening, we're going to be treated to a interesting experience. Frederick, again, is the creator of the Nomad University, and you can go and look at his website. I just want to read, to give you an idea, I just want to read here one of the first paragraphs on his website. He said, Nomad University is an international network of outstanding teachers allied with an open global community of self-directed students. We do not offer standard academic degrees. In fact, in our school, it is the students who grade the teachers. The teachers can pass or fail. Good teachers get to teach more, while the bad ones go away and stop bothering the students. Now, if that gives you the idea, or an idea, that Frederick is an out-of-the-box thinker, then you would be right. I think Frederick is probably listening. Frederick, are you listening here? If you can just key in and say hello.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Good, that's working.
Well, say hello to the audience here and say just a few words because we need to go along, but perhaps you can just say a few words to us.
All right. Well, actually, I'm very pleased that you read that quote because that was recently just added to the website, and it's the first time I've heard it spoken by someone else. But I think most of us who survived our school experience either had a wonderful time with it, and I find that to be a very small number of people, and the rest of us suffered through it with a certain amount of stress and anxiety being the main characteristics of the experience. And I'm very excited about spending some time with Winston and James Gilliland and speaking within the space that they create because they are extremely interesting people. Therefore, they're the kind of teachers that I look for. And I find that the subject matter is less important than the way in which the teacher embodies that subject matter. Because as children, we are inspired by people who fascinate us, and I think that's the key to good education. Spontaneous concentration rather than you better learn this by Friday because you're going to be tested on it, and you can either pass or fail. That's an unhealthy environment for learning. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to speak within that new context and to sort of reinforce whatever impulses you all already have about thinking for yourself and following what feels right. And if you do that, you will end up in a better place than if you follow the instructions of other people who are not you. So that's my short.
Well, thank you very much, Frederick. We'll look forward to your presentation.
Looking forward. I'm going to go back on mute.
Okay, thanks.
One moment, Winston.
Yep.
Okay, Winston?
Okay, all right, I'm back. All right, well, that's what you got to look forward to on Friday night. And then on Saturday, we'll probably start out touching upon some of the points that I know everybody's interested in that we'll discuss briefly tonight. And then, so we'll be all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and depending on how much information I have to share with the new government and the new money system and so forth, then we'll go on to some of the other third-dimensional dilemmas that many people face and so forth, and bring some of those things forward. So in any event, I'm looking forward to it. We had such a great time last year up at the ranch. We have a great experience. Matter of fact, I was just up there this weekend, and we went out. I think it was on Saturday evening, and we had a sky watch. And wow, the activity was fast and furious. I mean, and if any of you have been there and looked over at Mount Adams, you know that there's a doorway that the ships go in and out of, and that whole mountain was alive. They were crawling with ships over there, some of them very, very bright. And I also saw something I never had seen before, and that was that some of the ships that were queuing up to go in through that doorway were actually messaging back and forth with light beams to some of the ships that were overhead. I've never seen that done. But in any event, talking to James about it, he was pretty excited, as we all were, and we had thought in our minds or in our conversation that because of the activity and the apparent excitement going on above, that there were big events happening here below. So we'll go over some of that here just shortly to kind of give you an idea of what we have going on. Now, so that's kind of the general gist of how the seminar is going to go, and look forward to seeing as many of you out there as can get there. And we'll try to give you as much information that may be useful to you in your lives as possible. All right, well, let's get on to the recent news, if I can give that to you. And I don't know how far back I need to go with this audience, but perhaps I should back up just a little bit. Some of you may not be familiar with what has caused the recent events. And so for that reason, I'll go back and review some of our past history. Not very far back. I don't think I'm going to go all the way back to 1776. But to just say that the original intent of what's known as the Founding Fathers, most of whom were Scottish Rite Freemasons, but the announced intent was to create a republic form of government. Now, as I have pointed out, if you look closely at history, you'll see that that's not the case. We've never had a republic, never have had. What we have had is certainly short of that. Now, if you get down into our present time, as you follow the various historical events, we come down to our present time. And for those of you who have heard me discuss the periods of national bankruptcy, which ended in 1999, you realize that since that time that the United States has actually been under the total control of a corporation, which is basically known as the United States Incorporated, which is a maritime corporation registered in Puerto Rico. So, Bill Clinton, at one point, I saw him say it, I think it was on television, or maybe I saw it on YouTube, but he made the statement, I am the last United States president, and he was. The subsequent quote-unquote presidents have simply been CEO of the United States Incorporated. Now, prior to that time, many of the acknowledged presidents have been wearing two hats, and that was they were the president of the United States and also the CEO of the United States Incorporated. But after 1999, with the termination of the third period of national bankruptcy, then there was no one who could fill the office under the original intent of the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution for the United States of America, and we went totally fascist. Now, fascism means rule by corporations. I think some of you may have looked at that movie Freedom to Fascism by Mr. Russo. Certainly, I think you can find it on the internet if you haven't seen that. But in any event, after 1999 and into 2000, with the new administration, as it were, we were a total fascist state because, again, we were ruled by a corporation, and perhaps many corporations, I should say. Now, that causes a lot of problems. Then there was a coup by that corporation in 2001. I think many of you remember September the 11th, 2001. That was a coup. That was a takeover by corporate government. And there were many factions within that. And so at present, or I shouldn't say at present, but for a number of years through two administrations, we have simply been under the dictatorship of the corporation and the corporate officers. Now that's a mouthful, and I'm not taking it back. So many of the things that we've had to do as solutions in commerce to create remedies to prevent people from being injured by this corporate concept, we have developed, for those purposes. And it's not to say that everybody has been successful with all the technology. Many have, some haven't, so forth. But one of the purposes of bringing these technologies and so forth to the forefront is for self-empowerment. And that is, if you just simply sit idly by and allow some corporation to simply trample upon you, you're not making any progress either in the third dimension or in a fifth dimensional type vibration situation, hence removing commercial karma part 2. And so at the very least, those who have learned some of the technologies and applied some of those things, win, lose, or draw, at the very least, you have gained a certain amount of self-confidence in yourself and in your ability to stand for yourself. This planet was designated as a free will planet. But freedom is not cheap, folks. You got to get out there and put a little bit of effort into it, or it's all just talk. And so, step up to the plate, get busy. So that's what we've tried to encourage. Now, pardon me for getting on my soapbox again. So let's go back and review some of the actions that have been taken. Some of you are old enough to recall Vietnam, or the false flag known as Vietnam. I mean, many of you probably have studied into the cause of all that foolishness. Some of us as young men got drafted into that, and so we kind of have a bitter taste in our mouth about those circumstances. It's unfortunate that the succeeding generations didn't learn from that, because now we're involved in those same kind of things at present. But it looks like many in the military are becoming much more enlightened and are starting to take a real close look at what's going on with some of these operations by the United States Incorporated and the Pentagon, which is also a corporation. Oh dear. Okay, so early on, there were some in the military who saw things for what they were. Some high officers and so forth were starting to take a real close look. And so there was an undercurrent within the military. Now you have to understand that since the Civil War, the United States of America has been under military occupation. the ultimate power in this country is, in fact, the military, in particular the U.S. Army, because, again, it deals with the land, you see. So anyway, there was an undercurrent. Thoughts were being passed back and forth, and so eventually, and I can't give you the exact start of it. I've known about it perhaps for 7 or 8 years now. But at some point, the U.S. Army created and staffed a complete structure for a republic. And as I understood it, they were stationed in West Virginia. Some say they were stationed in Virginia. But in any event, somewhere there, either in West Virginia or Virginia, they were completely staffed, waiting for when they would be called forward. Now, they would be called forward in the event that there was no possible way that the existing administration, once it got past the tipping point, they simply had to step in to save the country. And they have stepped forward. Now, in about January of 2015, they began to operate in earnest. The general that was in charge of it at that time was General Carter Ham. Some of you may recognize that name. He was one of the Army generals that were fixing to send troops in to rescue those at Benghazi. But he was ordered to stand down by the quote-unquote Commander-in-Chief and Secretary of State. And I think he probably has a bitter taste in his mouth about that. But in any event, it appears that General Carter Ham was inserted as the interim president of the interim republic. And so he began operations in earnest, as I understand it, in January of 2015. Now, on the international front, the international global financial matrix was under repair. Now, this repair of the international financial matrix has been and is being orchestrated by the ascended master known as Saint Germain. I think some of you are familiar with those things. In any event, as the correction of the financial matrix was being done, there were certain accords which were agreed to, which was known as the Basel Agreements. In particular, the Basel III Agreement specified that a national currency, in order to trade internationally, would have to be substance-backed, you see. And so the new interim republic had no gold with which to create a national currency. As some of you have recalled, the operations that we had done in regards to the Federal Reserve Bank, I've told this story so many times, I hate to tell it again, so I won't. But in any event, starting in 2013, because of the actions we had taken, the Federal Reserve Banks, all 12 of them, could not recharter. And so they were basically melded into the United States Treasury. Well, of course, the U.S. Treasury weren't much better than the Federal Reserve Banks, but in any event, so we had these things in operation. Now, the new government, of course, would not incorporate the Federal Reserve System within this new republic, and certainly not the currency. That's what's called the Federal Reserve Notes. And I think you're all pretty familiar with Federal Reserve Notes and the ramifications that come from dealing with that. So, the new president was under the problem of getting some gold so that the new republic could create usable, recognizable currency for use both internationally and domestically. So in consequence of that, along about April, and there may be more since that time, but anyway, in April, to start it off, the Chinese elders gave the new republic the equivalent of 100 billion in gold bullion. Now, as I understand it, that gold bullion is being held on an army base in Texas. I don't know which one, don't really care to know. But it's not in Fort Knox, I can guarantee you that. All the gold in Fort Knox had been stolen long ago. So again, this gold is being scrupulously guarded so that it cannot be stolen. But with that gold in hand at that point to comply with the Basel III agreements, the new republic could, in fact, create a new currency, which they did. Now, that new currency is known as Treasury Reserve Notes. Now, let me explain that. This money is government-level money. In other words, this money does not go out to the public for use on the streets like what we do, all right? But it was a valid currency, and it started trading in the international markets in the summer of 2015, and it's still trading. So we know that it's a valid currency, recognized internationally. Otherwise, why would they trade it in the markets? All right. Now, so what good does that do you and I? All right. The next thing that had to be created was a usable currency. And sometimes I hate to use the word money, so I'll just say currency. Anyway, a usable currency for use by the people in their day-to-day standard commercial and business activities. Now, this currency is known as United States notes. Emphasis on note. For those of you who have studied into what's called the Federal Reserve note, you immediately understand, or you can identify it, that it's not a note. I don't care what it says it is. For those of you who have studied any degree of negotiable instrument law, you'll recognize that the Federal Reserve note is not a note. It's only a perpetual annuity bond. And so that's what we were using as money in our transactions and so forth, which caused us no end of problems, as many of you know. In any event, the new republic has been involved in the creation of United States notes. Now, they're going to be a little bit different looking. I haven't seen any myself, but they have been printed up. They are being held in the banks, and we, being some of those who I work with on the international, had expected that they would release the use of the United States notes last October. But October came and went, and the notes still were not in use on the street by the people. So we're scratching our heads trying to figure out why that is. And so what we found was that there was a great deal of pushback from the cabals, from the internet, some of the cabal banks, and some of those elements. And so it was kind of like taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back there for a very long time. So that problem had to be dealt with. So in any event, as I had mentioned, the Pentagon being a corporation and actually acting as if they were part of the fascist regime had to be dealt with. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs was General Martin Dempsey, and I can guarantee you that he was a large part of that problem. So eventually, General Dempsey got released, and in his place in November, the U.S. Congress selected General Dunford of the United States Marine Corps as the chief of the or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the Pentagon. Now we're starting to see a little bit of change here. So when that happened, we were all, wide-eyed listening to see what would go on, trying to find every little bit of scrap of information that we could possibly find. And so in consequence of his appointment, he went into action real quick. Because along with being the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he also took the position that General Ham had taken as the acting president of the interim government. And so you can go back and study that history. I think at this point there's a lot that can be found on the internet. And, of course, the powers that be, the cabal, and all those kind of people basically started taking pot shots at him. I mean, they were trying to kill him. He avoided death on a couple of occasions. The last intel that I have received indicates that General Dunford is, in fact, dead. Now, I can't, swear to that, but the last intel that I had gotten indicated that it happened, and so I assume, even though I don't know, I don't have any intelligence on this, but I assume that General Ham probably took that back up. I don't know that for a fact, but anyway, it only makes sense to me. In any event, some of the things that accomplished by General Dunford, number one, he shut down the Federal Reserve completely. They pressured the CEO of the United States Incorporated to resign. General Dunford did, in fact, take over the White House, and there for a time, General Dunford was flying around on Air Force One, if that gives you an idea. You see, sometimes you just have to take the little bits and scraps of information that you find and make deductions and make conclusions from the things, from the small things that you see. Now, as we roll into our present situation here, this being an election year, there's a lot of excitement. I mean, we have the leading candidates, as we suppose, to be Mr. Trump and Mrs. Clinton. Rest assured, neither of those will be the elected president of the new republic come November. That will not happen. Now, let me give you a quick rundown on some of the things that happened in the interim, because there's been so much shifting going on, it's really hard to keep up with it. And a lot of it, again, you just have to use left-handed information and intel to draw conclusions from. But at probably around last spring, so forth, it was thought, or at least the logic was that the American people would become perhaps spooked if it was found out that a military general was actually running the government. They perhaps would think that there had been a military coup, which could be further from the truth, but that was the thinking at that time. So at that time, since the president and vice president had already resigned, they went to the third in line, who was the Speaker of the House, Mr. Paul Ryan. And what they did was they put him forward for all to see, or I mean, for those who could see, they put him forward as the acting president of the new republic. Now, perhaps the thinking was that we had a historical precedent for that. Some of you, if you recall back to the times of President Nixon, things weren't going too well. When President Nixon took office, he had a vice president by the name of Agnew who had to resign due to legal problems. And so then they brought on Nelson Rockefeller as the vice president. Mr. Rockefeller apparently suffered an untimely death. And so what they did is they went to the Speaker of the House, who was Gerald Ford. So that when Nixon stepped down, Gerald Ford, as the Speaker of the House, became an unelected president. So we have that in our history. So there, for at least a while, it looked like they were trying to put forth Mr. Paul Ryan as the interim president, simply so that the public would not think it was a military coup. And then at some point, I think that even changed around. So I'm not really sure of some of those inner workings at this point. But regardless of who took the nomination at the GOP, let me suggest that individual, Mr. Trump, will in fact step down. At that point, Mr. Paul Ryan will step forward, and I believe that he will become elected in November as the next United States president. I'm giving pretty good odds on that. But in any event, one of the things certainly that will be executed upon when he takes that position will be NESARA. Some of you know about NESARA. Some of you perhaps don't, but it's an acronym. It's the National Economic something. I can't remember what it all is. But anyway, it was signed into law by the last United States president, who was Bill Clinton. He signed it into law, and they had intended to start executing upon it. But the only thing that prevented them from doing it was when they, on September the 11th, they took down the Twin Towers, which were the offices for those who were working on the SARA were located. So that set that effort back quite a ways. But here we are now, finally in 2016, going into 2017, and that will be executed upon. So if you want to go and study that, look up the provisions. They're very, very favorable for the people. And so you can go look that up. Just for those of you who don't know that, let's look up NESARA and look at the various websites and so forth, some of which are complete baloney. So you got to sift through it, go into your heart and look at those things and look at some of the history of it. There's quite a bit of history, and we'll go over some of that history up at the seminar at ECETI. But in any event, go into the history of it and take a look at it, because I think you will be very, very pleased. All right, so we're kind of down to the point now where some of these things, the expectations are getting very, very high. And the thing that I have focused on, especially in regards to public opinion, has to do with money. And so people are if they can go to the store and buy their groceries, if they can put gasoline in their automobiles and so forth, then pretty much things are okay. If they couldn't do that, then there'd be a problem. So those who are working these things have been very, very careful. And over the last number of months, as things have gone on, there's been a lot of pushback from the cabals. And perhaps I should at this point bring in the concept of what's known as the RV, or the revaluation of currency. Now, this revaluation of currency is an important thing to have happened. It certainly was being promoted by the Chinese elders and the White Dragon Society. And let's see, I can't recall just exactly when it started, but they started working on that, I think, in either 2013, perhaps the fall. Anyway, they met together at the World Trade Center in Reno, Nevada, and started to hammer this out. Now, there's two purposes and two effects. Well, I shouldn't say only two, but I'll just talk about these two because perhaps they're the most important. And that is, number one, one of the intended purposes was to break the hold of the petroleum cabals on the Middle East, on the Middle Eastern oil. Unfortunately, we're still driving around in automobiles, airplanes, and whatnot that require petroleum-type fuel. And we should have been way past that by now, but because of the petroleum cabals, we simply haven't made it away from that polluting element. But as the RV was structured and the events connected with it, and I hope someday somebody will write the book on that so we can get all the details, just how they did that. But in any event, as they move forward with that revaluation, they successfully broke the hold of the petroleum cabals on the Middle East and basically put them into a pretty bad, dire situation. For instance, it's well known that the Rockefeller Empire had been divesting itself of petroleum and were going to alternative energy. Can you believe that? Why would they do that? Because obviously they saw the writing on the wall. And so eventually they were able to break that hold. Now that's really an important thing, because if we can break the hold not only of the Middle Eastern oil and with the efforts of the Chinese elders and so forth to bring out and put into production what people generally call free energy devices, not only for your home, but for your means of transportation, then we will have accomplished a great thing. So what was done with that RV was ever so important for us to make progress in those areas. Now, the second element of the RV that I like to talk about has to do with taking control away from the central banks. Now, as I have shown in 2012 when we did that commercial lien and prevented the Federal Reserve banks from rechartering in January of 2013, the idea was to put the central bank back into the control of a nation's treasury. Because all over the planet, all these countries have their own central banks, and if you'll go and investigate this, you'll find that these central banks have done nothing but rape the country of their assets, and they do it in various means and so forth, as you can well imagine. All right. So it was actually the central banks that were, how regulating a nation's either prosperity or disparity, because it's the central banks that were keeping all of these what we call third world countries in poverty. That's who was doing it. The central banks were doing it by manipulating the currencies. So in consequence of that, it's obvious that if you want to get past that problem, that you're going to have to get the central banks under control. All right. So what they did with the revaluation of the currencies, they went into each country, each nation, and evaluated certain elements within that country. Number one was perhaps the gross national product. In other words, what were the people really making that could contribute to international commerce? Number two, they looked at natural resources in the ground, perhaps timber, precious metals, I don't know what all. And so they evaluated a particular country based on those elements and perhaps some others. And from that, they rated their currency in a hierarchical manner. And so in other words, if a country had good manufacturing, they were producing, they had perhaps good natural resources, even oil, like, for instance, in Iraq. In any event, they rated on a hierarchical scale the value of a nation's currency and took that power away from the manipulation by the central banks. So now we have a stabilization. And these countries that have been under the thumb of the cabals and the banks and so forth now come out from under that. And so regardless of the particular money of a country, such as a third world country, it's now competitive with the currencies of other countries, of the Europeans, the North Americans, American and Canada and all that kind of thing. So that is the method that is being used to bring what we call third world countries out of poverty. That's how it works. That's how it's going to happen. Now, in order to do that, and I don't want to get into the technicalities of this next part because I don't understand all of those technicalities. In certain instances, some of the currencies of some of those countries were offered for public sale. And many people in the United States and other places, even governments, actually there's 5 tiers. It's a 5-tier system of investors in those currencies. And people on the street like you and I know some of you have invested in some of those currencies. But in any event, people like you and I are tier 5. So you will get paid last. Now don't be upset by that. Probably you're going to get paid this week. There's been a lot of pressure on, as I had mentioned, for a long time. It was 2 steps forward and 3 steps back with much of that. But the opposition to this is slowly but surely being removed. And the way that it's being removed is that the White Dragon Society put up a ton of pure gold as a bounty for anyone who could convince so-and-so to change their ways. And I'm not sure whether they cared if it was dead or alive, but I'll assure you that many bounties have already been collected. I mean, I have the information on some of that, and they're still working on it. Once they got rid of the top tier, if I can use that word, the top tier of some of these cabals and so forth, then they still had to deal with the lower level operatives. And they're going after them with extreme prejudice. They've all been given all the chances, that you could give them, and they still would not relent, which is typical of sociopaths. But in any event, it finally came to the end where they said, okay, well, we'll simply just have to get rid of you, and they have. As I've mentioned in times past, about 3 or 4 years ago, St. Germain had sent me a message in regards to the situation, which was basically this: no one will stand in the way. Anyone who gets in the way will be removed. And so we've come down to it right now. So many of those who have been given so many chances are simply being removed. Now, I feel sorry for that. I'm not one of those out there doing that. But if that's what it comes to, that's just what it has to be. Now, those are kind of hard statements, and I'm really sorry that it's come to this, but that's what it has come to, and that is what is happening. So in any event, the last information that I had received, and I do have a few contacts that I can rely upon, some of them directly into the White Dragon Society and others who are well connected in these international things. It appears that what's called the RV, for those of you who have currencies to redeem, I believe they'll start on that redemption probably this week. I don't see anything else in the way of it now. So watch for it. Certainly some of you who are involved in some of the redemption groups, you know about this. Other people who are not connected to any particular group, at some point you'll be able to go directly into the bank and redeem your currencies for whatever rate is available at that time. So this is going forward. Look for it. It'll be here quick as a flash. In any event, that's kind of a summary of some of the happenings that are going on right at this present time. And as we get into the seminar mode, we need to spend some real time. Now, Saturday evening, I should say, while I was up at the ECETI Ranch with James, as it turned out, he had scheduled to do an interview with a particular individual who could not make the call. So James asked me, if I would fill in. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll fill in." So he may have that that interview posted on his website by now. I'm not sure. But in any event, what I was trying to stress in that particular interview is the necessity of the people to approach this whole thing, this new republic and all these things, from a moral point of view. We have been involved for the last number of years, even decades, in gross immorality. And I'm not talking about internet porn and all that. I'm talking about the way we conduct our lives. Now, some of the people listening to this call may have lived your whole life under fascism, and you have no idea what it's like to operate within a republic. And so there's going to have to be some education. There's going to have to be some real thought put into this. We who have a little bit more experience than some of the others, myself in seminars, or some of you with your family and neighbors and so forth, you're going to have to sit down and have not a come to Jesus meeting. You're going to have a come to Republic meeting. And you're going to have to reevaluate the way you have conducted yourselves in the past and make resolutions to do just a little bit better here in the near future. because there's no reason in this world to change a government and then going back to doing the same stupid things that we've done in the past. That makes absolutely no sense. And so as we go into the November elections, and as we have other elections for congressmen in your local areas and all these kind of things, you will be looking, not for the guy who's the best politician or who has the most money, but you'll be looking for someone who stands upon moral principles, honesty, fairness, and all those kinds of things. And those are the people that you would want to elect to be representatives in a republic form of government. And so the responsibility is on us. The responsibility is on you and I, because we're the ones who will have to guarantee the republic. We cannot depend upon the U.S. military to guarantee the republic. The responsibility is upon us. And so in some cases, we have some who are very, very qualified, very well studied in these matters. And then we have some perhaps who haven't had the opportunity to look into these things very closely. So I would suggest to everybody, start thinking about this, think about how you will live, what you will do, how you will interrelate with your neighbors, how you will carry on your third dimensional commerce. Because these things are all necessary if we expect to see a success of this new enterprise that we're entering into. So I see our time is kind of spent. Usually on some of our calls, we open up the mic for questions and so forth. That's not the format for tonight. And I think Melissa perhaps has a few closing comments. But I just want you to all do some introspection. Given the chance, what will you do? Given the chance, how will you live your life? And when you come out from under this problem that we've lived with for all these years, I mean, there's going to be some scars. There's going to be some karma that we might have to answer for. Of course, at our seminar, I'm going to show you about that. But in any event, it's not like turning on a light switch. I mean, you just don't, turn on a switch in somebody's brain and then all of a sudden they're operating correctly. It just doesn't work that way. And so it's going to take an effort by everybody. And so you just need to roll up your sleeves and get prepared. Those of you who have been studying, commercial principles, those of you who have been studying law, those of you who have been studying this good old-fashioned love your neighbor and going by the golden rule. I mean, be prepared. Be prepared to assist family and friends, neighbors, and communities, because that's what is going to make it successful. I don't care how many people you elect to whatever office. Without the people, the thing will be a miserable failure again, and we don't need that. All right, well, that's pretty much my preaching. I mean, up on this soapbox here, preaching as hard as I can, and so I'm kind of done with it now. So, Melissa, if you want to take over, I'll just stop talking.
All righty. Well, thank you, Winston. We appreciate you. It really, truly is amazing times that we live in right now. I know I'm looking forward to this event myself. Once again, please visit www.privateinvitationeceti.com to register and to learn more about the venue. Keep in mind as well that that the early bird discount does expire on August 18th, so be sure to register before that deadline for extra savings. I also want to mention to folks, if this time together with Winston has been something you've enjoyed, you may consider looking into our Gardening with Winston membership. We do have information on our website about the membership. It really allows for increased access to Winston. One of the best benefits of the membership itself is the twice monthly conference calls where we do have Q&A sessions. We also archive those calls, so as a member you get access to years of archived information and the opportunity to send questions into Winston for our twice monthly conference calls. So I encourage you to check that out. We do appreciate you joining us this evening, folks, for the topic preview. As a special thank you, we are offering attendees a choice of one of two special discount offers. We are offering the DVD recording of last year's original Removing Commercial Karma seminar at half off of the retail price. This is a great deal. If you want to take advantage of this offer, you can visit our e-store at www.wisic.info. That's WSSIC, and use the following coupon code at checkout. That would be RCK, which stands for Removing Commercial Karma, the number 2, the word preview, and the number 50. So again, that's RCK2 preview 50. That is all caps with no spaces. Also, for folks that may already have that title in their educational library, we are offering a coupon for $30 off of any order in our e-store. That's good for one item or take it off your entire order. To take advantage of this offer, you can use the following coupon code, which is the same as the previous one, RCK, the number 2, the word preview, but then it's the number 30 at the end, 30. So again, that coupon code is RCK2 preview 30. Both of these coupon codes will expire on August 31st, but we hope you do take advantage of that offer. For more information on Removing Commercial Karma 2, please do take some time to visit our website at www.wisic.com and click on the Seminars tab on the left side of the page. Once more, I would like to thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your interest and participation this evening. From Winston and the rest of the staff here at Solutions in Commerce, we wish you all a great night. Bye-bye.